Rhymes Mackie. Come on.
Wicked. Hi guys. Sorry that we're late. Apologies once again. Everybody seems that they are in at the moment. My name is Nicole. I've been project managing this alongside MMF and the Zoo. And yeah, we're excited to see what we have today. We have Avelino, Lunic, and Eve. And yeah, we can't wait. So I'm going to hand over to Whitney, who's more better at the public speaking than I am. So take it away, Whitney.
No, I'm not. You just get thrown in at the deep end and you just have to do it. And good evening, everyone. So for today's discussion, we're discussing Black music and joint ventures. And with the amazing panel, we're kind of going to go through their journeys in the industry, talking about unlocking barriers, collaborating on business partnerships, and what that kind of looks like from their respective roles. As Nicole mentioned, we have Eve, who is a senior A&R at AWOL. We have Lunic, who's talking from the perspective of Dream Life Records, A&R manager, and then we have Avelino and G, who are here on behalf of Sync Music. Thanks, everyone. So just really quickly, and I know introductions can be really long, but if everyone can kind of just introduce themselves. So what I will do is I'm actually going to start with Eve. Be awkward because you're muted. But yeah, Eve, just like tell everyone on the call who you are, what you do.
Sure. Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Eve. I'm a senior A&R at AWOL, which is a label services distribution company. I started my career at Cobalt Publishing, and I was A&R there for 7 years. I signed artists like Jack Garrett, Chronix, Coffee, Mahalia, and a producer called Vegan. And then I more recently moved over onto the record side at AWOL. So I work with artists like Little Sims, Tamara, a couple of other new artists. And then AWOL also has some label deals that we do. So we work with managers and artists who have their own labels that go through AWOL too. So we can get into that later. But yeah, that's me.
Lunic?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a co-managing director at a label called Dream Life Records, which is a part of Sony. Before that, I was an A&R manager at Virgin. I signed Mo Stack, Russ, Tion Wayne, and Hardy Capri over there. And yeah, that's me.
Heavy hitters. And then last but not least, Av and G.
Yeah, I'm Avelino. I'm with my brother G. I'm a rapper from the UK. G not only manages me, but he's my business partner in most of the moves I make. One of them being Sync Music. We started Sync Music, it's a fairly new company this year. And the reason why we started it was it came off the back of our own personal success with Syncs. You know, we had some good experiences with Syncs, you know, launching FIFA 18, doing links with Anthony Joshua, doing the Tomb Raider film, doing, you know, various computer games, you know, just the Syncs were flowing. So we just thought, you know, let's exploit that and turn it into a business in which other people can benefit from the same way that we did.
Amazing. Well, you've actually, Av, via your answer, kind of helped me flow into my next question. So I'm actually now going to go over to Lunic and ask if you can kind of just give us a little bit more of a backstory. Obviously, I understand that you were at Virgin and then you launched the label, but just if you can kind of give us a little bit of insight into the journey of establishing the label and kind of and why you chose to kind of step out and do that.
Well, I mean, for me, before working at Virgin, I didn't really I hadn't had like an official sort of job in the industry. So Virgin was kind of like my first sort of like music job. And I think it goes down to like, you know, things when I was a kid, like I always looked at like, you know, P. Diddy, looked at Birdman and Jay-Z, and I didn't even know what A&R was. I just know that these people own their labels and that's what I wanted to do. And so when I started working at Virgin, and then I started having like some success there, that goal has always been at the back of my mind. This is just a thing of, you know, me wanting to do it. And I felt like, you know, there's, you know, just because you want to do something, it doesn't mean that you have to do it straight away. There's like a time and a place, and sometimes an opportunity presenting itself. And I think I got to a point where an opportunity presented itself, and it's either I was gonna take the opportunity and go for it, or I was just gonna sort of like, you know, carry on what I was doing. But I think that you know, that desire to have a label from being young, I think is was the main motivation.
All right, amazing. And then Eve, in regards to kind of stepping up or outside of publishing into AWOL, what kind of motivated your decision to move into that structure versus staying in publishing?
Yeah, so I was always on the publishing side very artist focused. So I had one producer on my roster, but outside of that, it was predominantly artists that I was signing. So I'd always aim to sort of start that artist development and build relationships with artists from early on the publishing side. So it felt like this sort of natural transition to move over to the record side at AWOL, just because there's the ability to work with artists early on, early stages with EPs and mixtapes. It doesn't have to be, you know, at a point where everyone's like ready to go straight into the album. So for me, it just felt really natural. I'd always loved artist development and getting stuck in. So moving over to the record side just felt really the right thing to do.
And then Avengie, I guess you kind of did cover it in your intro, but I guess the motivation behind starting the company was you yourself seeing success in the sync world and thinking, you know, that you guys would like to venture into that yourselves. Was there anything else behind that, or is that in a nutshell?
No, obviously, in a nutshell, it was just obviously I've never done a publishing deal myself. You know what I mean? So we was able to procure these sync opportunities, you know, independently, and just after the series of syncs that we had, the main motivation, like I said, was just, you know, we just spoke between each other and just thought, imagine we had a base, a business where, you know, people can own their own music and we procure syncs for them in a non-exclusive way, and you know, they own their music and we take commission. We just thought it was a great idea, just because we'd flourished off it ourselves.
All right, amazing. And moving on to the next point then, kind of slightly touching on what people talk about when they discuss institutional racism in industry, is that there isn't enough representation within teams, so that these companies profit off of Black creativity, but don't necessarily feed back into the community, or their teams aren't representative of the music or the content, for example, that they're producing. And so a lot of the times when companies are looking to increase market share, they actually go after Black consumers, whether or not their company kind of reflects back the audience or the consumer that they're going after. So I'm going to ask this question to Eve then. Do you think it's important that there is more Black ownership within our industry, and for, you know, for us to be represented at executive level within these companies? I'm sure the answer is yes, but, you know, quite a leading question.
It's crucial. It's so crucial. And I remember starting in the industry, and especially like the music I loved, like US hip hop, UK hip hop, like I went into expecting to see companies that reflected the artists that I'd always loved and I'd grown up listening to. And that's in the UK and in the US. And then I was really shocked coming into it and being like, wait, so like the head of A&R here that signed X, Y, and Z, or the whole department here is very white, but they're working a predominantly Black roster and artists. So I think it's crucial. Like if you're coming into a company, you want to feel represented and reflected within that. And so I definitely think there's still a lot of work that the industry needs to do as a whole. There's been some positive change, but I would still say at senior level, presidents of labels, heads of departments, there's still so much that needs to be changed there. So yeah, I just got to keep pushing at it.
Agree. And actually that feeds us like quite nicely into Lunit, because I guess you are an example of, you know, really a fully Black team in regards to ownership. Why was ownership important to you guys, and how does that also, I guess, filter down into your team and the inner structure of, you know, what you guys are creating at Dream Life Records?
I would say it was important to us. Like ownership was important because I just feel like the way we are as people, we always like try to be very like DIY and go-getters and stuff. And, you know, we put a lot of energy and time into things. And I think you know, very rarely the people that we work with, like, it's very rarely that we don't understand what it is that they're doing or what they're trying to. And like you said, the representation thing, like, I think it's very important for people to come into a building, you know, telling them that this is we're passionate about their music, but also showing them that, you know, that the people that's going to be working their records or communicating it out to the public as have some form of representation, or they can at least relate to, you know, just to some form of degree. Because a lot of the times when I speak to artists, there's often a disconnect between what they perceive of labels and what sometimes the reality of it is. And I think the ownership thing again goes back to just like, for us, we were just looking at it like, you know, we put a lot of time, a lot of energy into things, and we really want to be we're passionate about the things that we want to sign. So I just think that, you know, the day of working hard to not get that much of a reward is, you know, is starting to disappear. I feel like I would prefer to take less money knowing that I own it, rather than take more money and not owning something, because it's about building legacies. It's about setting precedents and ultimately changing narrative. You know, if I can do it, then it can encourage another 5-10 labels to then do it, and then slowly but surely, I feel like there will be less of a disconnect, because I do feel like, you know, a lot of artists in general, there's a stigma between them and labels, and we're just trying to sort of blur those lines.
Yeah, ownership definitely is the key word, or the operative word here in this conversation. And Av and G, I guess when it comes to Sync Music, the way that you could have created your business model was also to take ownership of the records, or to take a slice of the records that you guys are generating these syncs for, but you've chosen to actually still allow the artist to retain their ownership, which I guess is kind of speaking to what we're discussing, like the essence of what we're talking about here, which is, you know, really trying to empower artists and give them opportunities without taking from them in the same you know, breath.
Yeah, so like obviously with Sync Music, it's like I feel like artists and producers that we work with, during the process of, you know, signing agreements with them, we found that they've learned a lot just in that process, because there's a lot of things that, you know, they may have not understood previously about music publishing. And obviously at the end of the day, we've got a big vision. We want to be pretty much a standard for, you know, independent artists. You know, the same way PRS, the same way these other institutions are. If you're independent and you're unpublished, then you should be working with Sync Music. That's you know, what we're working towards. And the more you're educated about music publishing, and the more you're aware of the possibilities of benefiting off your music whilst owning it, the more likely you are to work with us. So it just works hand in hand in terms of our business model.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to just lead myself into point 2, because you just mentioned your business model. So what, from the perspective of Sync Music, what is the true meaning of joint ownership or a joint venture? Because in this instance, you are partnered with Cook and Vinyl to deliver your services. So, you know, can you kind of just talk us through what joint venture or joint ownership means from the perspective of Sync Music and the business structure, not necessarily the artist coming into it?
I guess essentially the way our joint venture works is that we kind of have designated roles. So we both bring advantages to each other, in the sense of us as Sync Music, we kind of bring the catalog to our partners Cook and Vinyl, and they're able to handle the back office of things in terms of administration. They have partners around the world. So I kind of guess with any kind of joint venture, there needs to be a need from both companies. Mm-hmm. And we kind of found that Cook and Vinyl kind of match our needs, and we match theirs in terms of they're kind of an older company and we're a newer company. So I guess just kind of matching our kind of needs and wants, we kind of were able to kind of find a balance and an equilibrium between the two to kind of make it work, if that makes sense, if that's a good answer.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you both bring something that the other lacks, maybe. They have the access, the infrastructure, distribution, but they wouldn't necessarily have had the access to the artists or the producers who maybe wouldn't have been familiar with the company, or that wouldn't have been a natural choice or fit for them.
Yeah,
right?
no, 100. Even if you look at the roster that they had prior to collaborating, it's almost like different genres from a different space. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. So it's like our network plus their network in terms of the back end of things, and around the world in terms of the different partners when it comes to collecting, or when it comes to procuring things, etc., just makes this situation that seems to work well at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And then Eve, I know you spoke about early on that there are, you know, different types of deals at AWOL, and I guess from my perspective, actually what you see is that the artist and management team like are the business entering into the joint venture with AWOL. So it'd be really interesting kind of to discuss that from your perspective and what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. So in terms of language, it's not technically a joint venture, because often joint venture is joint ownership within that. So it's actually more of like an administration based deal. And I think that's really interesting. And what Avelino said there about there being this sort of, there's got to be a balance of like, is the company benefiting? But most importantly, are you as in like the manager or the team benefiting from the company? And I think historically, it felt a bit more one-sided, of often companies were benefiting more than the teams that were going and joining in with those companies. And just to bring it back to how we work at AWOL, it is very much weighed towards the team, as in the artist and the manager, and them technically being, I guess, their own label, and then plugging into our teams, A&R team, marketing, international marketing, and then the global offices. So I like to see it as more of like a collaboration with the artist and the team that they've got around it. But ultimately, those teams are fully independent. They own their own music, and they're technically their own label within AWOL.
Right. Okay. Understood. And then Lunik, again, in the sense of, you know, Dream Life, would you class that as a joint venture or a joint partnership with Sony, and kind of how do you see that working, or how, you know, the structure of that business?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what Eve said was actually actually Av and Eve said is two crucial points in terms of, you know, I think in any form of business, like I think that there is definitely some form of collaboration or joining. Do you know what I mean? From like whether that's you providing them with, you know, artists and they providing you with the resources and stuff like that. But I think in a Dream Life sense, we had like, you know, a few offers for the label to, you know, to go to other places. But I feel like for us, what was important is that when we start looking at the team and the infrastructure that they can offer us, because obviously, you know, there's only so much that we can do. We need to sort of be empowered in terms of, you know, the types of deals that we do are not cheap, you know what I mean? The resources, the hiring people, marketing staff, radio people, and all of that sort of stuff. So we had to look at, you know, those are the things that we needed. And I guess for them, they wanted to have, you know, sort of like 3 young, exciting, executives to go and join their team and build up, you know, this new narrative and stuff like that. And I think once we identified both of those things, it was easier to sort of know what's each other's expectations. You know, in terms of, you know, once we go into partnership, we are expected to go out there and, you know, build this narrative, but we know that we can build that narrative or have conversation with even certain artists because we have that backing, the resources that Sony's providing to us. Whereas like we could have done it all ourselves, but we may not have, say, the finances or the, you know, the amount of resources to sign the types of artists that we want to sign. So yeah, I think it's definitely that recognition in both.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, because I guess, you know, Dream Life could have easily set up as an independent label and, you know, found a back-end distributor, and actually even with you guys, Avelino and G, you know, you could have been consultants and been hired, you know, on some kind of day rate or, you know, monthly rate to provide and consult services. But I know you would never have done that. But the point is,
yeah, the thought of man.
Is that actually what was better for you guys is to create the company and then you know, create these partnerships. So we've kind of talked about, you know, the pros of being in these partnerships or joint ventureships, and not necessarily in relation to your business specifically, but are there any, or when making this decision, what were, like, I guess, the cons, because there are pros and cons, or what were, you know, potentially like the negatives of doing so?
You talk to us?
Yeah. I'll Avelino and Jim,
okay.
First.
I'll say one I can think of is obviously the way we're working with these artists, the deals are not like, you know, fixed term.
Okay.
So, you know, maybe it's a con in terms of the valuation of the company is a bit more difficult to identify. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I think that's a con. Could be a con, but it has its pros at the same time.
I would also say maybe another con is just the peg stopping with you, really, like the responsibility. You know, when you are the boss or a director, or whatever you want to call it, of a company, you know, there is no one else to turn around to and say, or blame responsibility on. So, you know, if something messes up, it's either myself, either Roland have to answer to it. So that's definitely, you know, if someone doesn't get paid on time, results ain't happening, there's some kind of mistake happening, we have to kind of be responsible for and own up to it. So if you're not that kind of person, or you don't have that tenacity or that kind of, you can't handle pressure, then this is not the line of work for you, to put it simply.
Yeah, understood. And then Lunik, I guess kind of same question really, in that, as I touched on, you know, you could have been independent. You know, when I guess figuring out the strategy and structure of Dream Life, did you consider what the I'm not going to say negatives, but you know, the alternate side of, you know, the positives of going into joint ventureship rather than, you know, remaining independent?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I always just like, I look at, I always say that thing of that, you know, 100% of nothing is nothing. And it's like, you know, we can all like have companies, and it all goes down to, I think, the ambition of what you're trying to achieve. I think if you say to yourself, you know, there's myself and two other people, we want to shift popular culture and we want to sign artists that's going to, you know, that's going to change the landscape of popular culture. We can do that independently, but you know, you're probably having to do that with less resources, and it's a probability game. And I think when you look at those probabilities and you put that versus something that might be attractive to artists, the artists that you want to attract, i.e. whether that's, you know, finances, the team that they know has got expertise, because, you know, companies like Sony, Universal, Warner, they have been doing this for many years. So a lot of the times they've got resources or access to people that we may not have access to, i.e., you know, when you see a record really move, you start to see the presence of a label with radio, with with streaming platforms and stuff like that, playlisting and whatnot. And I just felt like we felt like it made like that made it was more beneficial for us to get that. But then in the disadvantage, you're having to give up something. So rather than having 100% ownership where it's all us, we're having to give, you know, half of our ownership to, you know, the partnership to Sony in return for them giving us the resources to in order to do what we need to do. But I think that's what a partnership is. Both people always have to compromise something. There's always has to be some form of compromise on each side. And I think also actually getting to know a whole new team again. You know, in this pandemic, didn't even get a chance to go into the office. Every email is somebody new from a new department that you've never spoken to. And it's just like, it goes on and on and on and on. And it's like, it's getting to know those people, like, you know, see who you click with. And I think the way you're interacting with people in records is not, you know, before in a label, you could just walk over to the radio person and say, hey, we've got this, we've got that. You know what I mean? You get your answers quite quickly. Now you're setting up a Zoom or you're setting up a pool when you're doing this. And it's like, or that can be, you know, can put up, I would say, like, sort of slow the process a bit down when you're used to being very active and DIY, doing things yourself. But yeah, apart from that, I would say, like, yeah, there's a lot of positive, but there's definitely negatives too, for sure. Yeah.
And then Eve, from the AWOL perspective, in regards to, obviously we discussed it's not necessarily a JV, you know, when they're entering into these deals or agreements with AWOL, but is there, you know, when you are talking to artists and managers, is there a preferred method of working with AWOL that people tend to approach you guys with?
Not really. I mean, it's definitely different depending on the stage that the team are at or the stage that the artist is at in terms of the deal that it enters into. But although it's not technically a joint venture in like the legal terms, it's definitely a joint, it's entering into something in a joint way. So it is that partnership of we're providing a service, funding, A&R support, all the traditional label factors, and we're then partnering with that artist and their team. So everything that Lunik said on like getting that balance and making sure that it's a partnership definitely applies across the way that we work with our artists and our labels. But yeah, and just to answer to your question, there's not sort of one set way. I mean, it's always project based as well. So we just kind of start the conversation, see where the artists are at, how ambitious they want to be, how many projects they want to be releasing and working with, and go from there.
Are there any examples, and sorry, this isn't off the top of the head question for you to answer for you, but are there any examples of managers that have kind of navigated that system really well, and any kind of like clear success stories?
I think most of the managers we work with, I think because of the setup of it being quite independent and quite DIY, we work with incredible managers because of that. They're almost having to be partly the label, the manager, and then I work really closely with a lot of managers who have great A&R ears, and they're really involved in the creative too. So yeah, I mean, I think managers that are probably attracted to it are the DIY, the like self-starter types who really want to be ambitious with the project. So that's perhaps a con to it though, like if that's not the style or the approach from the manager, and maybe they want more of a traditional deal, then that could be a bit of a con to the way of doing it, that DIY independent route, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
It definitely attracts a type of manager and a type of artist.
And it's, I guess, you know, it's ever increasingly that you're hearing artists talking about wanting to be independent, or maybe not even necessarily understanding what that means, but it definitely is the buzzword of the moment. And, you know, artists are looking at either how they can retain ownership or not have to go via the traditional major label system. And with that being said, it's not that, you know, the traditional major label system even wants those artists either. You know, you can't just put your hand up and apply for it. It's like they would have to want to sign you. So for the artists that, you know, are, you know, fully in control of their creative and have, you know, a good vision and roadmap for their career, I find, at least with a lot of the conversations that I'm having, that they're asking me more about distribution than they are, you know, can they be plugged into, you know, labels at this point in time. So it's definitely like an interesting time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's a real shift towards just, and also curiosity towards it, of seeing artists like Chance in the US, or, you know, like artists that are doing interesting types of deals or different types of deals. But there's also just, I think, such a space for like bespoke teams. So whether that's like doing it in a distributor way or working in the way that Lunik you work, where it's a very like bespoke team around the artist that you have, that feels like that's a real shift, which I think is exciting because it's more about engaging people around you and building a team that are just really going to push it and really going to go.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess even like just referring back to you, Lunik, and Dream Life Records, it's, I think, another advantage from Sony's perspective for working with people like you guys is that, you know, for the existing frontline labels that they have, artists might not feel like they have a home there. You might be an artist and you would look at Sony and think, oh, you know what, I maybe don't fit into Relentless, or I don't fit into RCA, or I don't fit into, you know, Columbia, for example, but they're, you know, they're giving artists additional options, I guess, to still come into the building by providing, you know, making partnerships with people like yourselves, so that artists can find the kind of bespoke team and the right fit, but they still kind of get the benefit of being within the, you know, the wider mainframe system. So yeah, I guess I understand it from that perspective too.
Yeah, but also to add to Eve's point about, you know, certain types of managers, you know, we're starting to see that as well, which is a disadvantage to us, because you're seeing a lot of, you know, artists who are starting to have a lot of success. They're very switched on, like they're very like, the first thing they want to know is about legal contracts, what ownership is, and sometimes, like you said, even if they don't like know what it is, they just want it because that's a buzzword. There's a lot of like artists who are having success independently, so then most people do feel, you know, why would I need to sign to a label and stuff like that. So
yeah, 100.
We're starting to see that surgence on our side as well, where, you know, some people like maybe 2 years ago might be more attracted to a label, but now they're a bit more attracted to a distribution system. So yeah, for sure, that's definitely another disadvantage to us.
And then If I bring it back over to Sync Music, is there a particular reason why you made the partnership with Cooking Vinyl? Like, were you looking at or discussing any other publishers to plug into, or did you already kind of have the relationship there?
Yeah, essentially off a good relationship there. Do you get what I'm trying to say? There's a lady that works there called Verity that, you know, was already working with quite closely in a similar way that we work with artists now. You get me? So it seemed like a natural progression. Obviously, we're always, you know, looking at the you know, looking at the landscape and seeing what's going on elsewhere. But essentially, you know, it was always going to happen. Cooking
Vinyl. Yeah, I would say we did have a few other independent options. As you know, there's the big three. There's Warner, ATV, and Universal. But I think with the kind of structure that we wanted, I think something very particular that we wanted to hold on to was kind of having the freedom to do what we want to do, being able to sign who we want to sign, not having to answer to anyone. And the kind of big advantage that we have with Cooking Vinyl is kind of, we do have that flexibility to kind of, we have free reign to kind of procure who we want to procure. There's no one to answer to. So I would say that we kind of, it was kind of a tactical decision, strategical and tactical at the same time to partner Cooking Vinyl. So yeah, I would say we did kind of shop around, but Cooking Vinyl was the best home for us, I would say.
I mean, you're touching on something actually that probably we should have discussed at some point, which is like the art of negotiation. So, you know, lawyers obviously do play quite a crucial role in, you know, securing deals and negotiating the rights that you want, or, you know, the business terms that you want. So as you kind of did touch on, there was some non-negotiables on your end that you wanted to make sure that you wanted.
Yeah, 100. Like the deal in our end was quite simple because we knew the business model and what that looks like. Do you get what I'm trying to say? That can never look like anything less than 50% on our side in terms of what we're trying to do. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So, you know, if it wasn't gonna fit into that criteria, it just wasn't gonna happen. And it's as simple as that. And you know, when you got a vision, some things are just not negotiable, and it's as simple as that. I think
break clauses as well. Break clauses. You need to kind of have expectations about what you guys expecting about each other, because you don't want to be tied in on something and then someone's not delivering. So you should always kind of also trying to have, always try to, I think for us, me and I personally, I think, you know, we've been in business for quite a while. So we've always kind of had that mentality of business. So we've, in terms of negotiating and discussing, it was quite straight. It wasn't straightforward, but we have a good lawyer, our guy Anthony Aram at Van Stratton. I think it was at Van Stratton at the time.
Yeah, at the time it was at Van Stratton, yeah.
My man, and you know, we kind of liaised with him a lot, read a few books, definitely read it. I think with negotiation, I think the more knowledgeable you are, the easier it becomes. You know, before I even spoke to Anthony, there's a book called All You Need to Know About the Music Publishing, and me and I both delved into that for about a good 2 to 3 weeks, trying to understand every single crevice and everything you need to know about publishing. So we kind of make sure we knew what we wanted to do and the kind of model that we wanted to go for. So kind of when it came to time to sit down with the lawyer, we kind of knew what we wanted to go for.
Yeah, no, 100. And just to touch on the books, just for anyone out there listening, I think when it comes to negotiating and investing, the best books you're gonna find on those things are about psychology. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So that's just a little point I like to put out there.
And when you're here now, so lads, go on. Elaborate on that point really quickly for me.
No, because all these things are about, you know, forget all the technical stuff. It's about, you know, having a vision and managing emotions. Do you get what I'm trying to say? That's why I say psychology, because, you know, when you're either investing in something or negotiating something, emotions can go all over the place. Someone puts a certain figure in front of your face and, you know, you react or do you get what I'm trying to say? And the psychology of these interactions is the most important thing, and any successful person will adhere to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And just really quickly in regards to you and your negotiation process and bringing Dream Life into Sony, was there quite a stringent negotiation process there? And were there things for you, you don't necessarily have to divulge them, but were there things for your team that you were like, you know, it has to be this or we can't do it?
Definitely. I always say as well, like never accept the first offer that they sort of make you, because often, you know, if they make, it's very difficult, because I think when they make an offer, that means you look at the numbers, you look at, you know, the terms, and when it's the first one, you're always like, okay, cool, this is it's a good starting point. And depending, I think that's where conversations are important. I think when I speak to managers or when I'm trying to do a deal or vice versa, someone's trying to do a deal with me, you know, there's always conversations about a ballpark, you know what I mean? Of like, these are my terms, this is what I'm looking for, this is what, you know what I mean? These are sort of like a ballpark to give to somebody else. And they might come back with some knockbacks, but you know that you've set out an expectation there. So when they come back with, you know, yeah, we're willing to do this, but we're not willing to do that, then you just have to make a decision of how important that thing is to you. Because there's some things that will be, like I've said, is non-negotiable. And there's some things that you might be able to just be like, okay, cool, you know, give something back in order to gain. But definitely,
100, definitely.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of back and forth until you get to that sort of like a middle ground where both people have put in, and you know, and both feel like they're satisfied. Because I always think in a good business deal is when the other person feels like they've got something out of it, like something great out of it. Do you know what I mean? But then, you know, I might feel like I did a great deal, but then on the other side, they might feel like they've done a great deal because, you know, what they value in the deal is something completely different. So
yeah, I guess ultimately in the realm of a joint venture, you know, it's actually not it. The best thing to do is for both parties to be happy, because you're entering into a long-term, you know, agreement and, you know, working partnership, versus it just being a straightforward deal where one or either party is just taking something and leaving. Actually, you're merging forces and joining together. So I guess, you know, both sides being happy is super important. I'm just going to move into like the last segment of questions here, and then I'm going to let like open the questions out to the floor. So Eve, I want to ask you this question, and then I need you to answer it in two ways, because one from the perspective of yourself and your role as a senior A&R, but then actually in the other sense for the artists that and managers that you know, go via AWOL. So I'll ask the question. So what does growth look like to you within your structure? So if you can answer from the perspective of artist growth through the AWOL system, and then we'll talk about you and your career at AWOL.
Totally. I think Little Sims is an amazing example of growth within being independent. I think, yeah, just as one artist example of the growth that she's done, the time that she's been in the game, like the records that she's released, I think she's an incredible example of growth within that. And also I think great growth within music is also just not having to compromise on like what you want to say and your sound. And yeah, I think she feels like an incredible artist that just fully embodies that, if I had to think of one artist within the system. And then personally on my side, it's how can one part of it is how can I like fully empower artists, like the next Sims coming through, or you know, a brand new like producer artist that's coming through, like how can I empower them where they can become a breaking artist, get all the big looks that you'd want when you've got a debut project coming, but then technically them being independent and them owning their own music. So that's the growth that I see, that I really want to provide to the artists that I'm working with. And then for me personally in my career, I think it's so important that there are more senior Black women in the industry, and that's something that I know as I progress, I want to be bringing more people in, bringing more like young Black girls who want to be A&R scouts in. Like when I started, that wasn't the case. Like there weren't very many Black women in A&R in getting into scouting. So that's a real goal of mine, is to like bring people through mentorships, so important, internships. Like yeah, that's my real goal for the next few years.
Amazing. I'm with you on that journey, don't worry. And Sync Music, what does growth look like for you in your structure?
100,000 artists.
Listen, our thing is I'm not joking, bro. Like, our thing is volume. Do you get what I'm trying to say? At the end of the day, our thing is volume. So the door is open. Like everyone come true. Everyone, we look after everyone. Do you get what I'm trying to say? 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, whatever the number is, we're doing this thing. We can look after as many people as we need to look after. That's what we're here to do. Do you get what I'm trying to say? As long as you're independent, there's money out there to be collected for you. if you need administration. There's sync opportunities for you to be put in front of that you might have not been put in front of had you not been with us or a major. And you might not be at a major. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So come to Sync Music. We do this thing. Check the CV. We're getting syncs all day long. This ain't not. Did you get what I'm trying to say to you? It's facts.
No, I hear you. So I guess so then growth for you within your structure is increasing roster, is becoming I guess the primary destination for artists that are, you know, releasing music and want opportunities and access for their music and their publishing.
Just to add, and just to add to I think just to add to what I was saying as well, is just creating more awareness and knowledge as well, you know, to independent artists, and especially you know, artists of urban music, or, you know, whatever culture, black culture, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think something a lot of us are unaware of. A lot of people are uneducated about kind of, you know, their publishing, understanding of their masters. So, you know, in this role and position now, we kind of want to be able to kind of grow and spread that out to everyone, so people can understand that there's the business of music. We definitely want to do that as well, while also increasing and, you know, having bigger offices and putting together great projects, creating great music as well. That's something we want to do as well. You know, as a publishing company, kind of our role to kind of not just admin and not just sync, but we also want to as well put a producer and a great writer together. You know, maybe one day our beloved brother Lunik might bring us one of his artists to work, one of our producers. You know, we would love something like that. You know, that's definitely something we want to do. So Sync Music is definitely, we want to kind of become a global player in the game for independent artists, and that's what we're looking for ultimately.
No, 100, and like you were saying, the more artists and producers and writers are aware and know about music publishing and, you know, the ins and outs that they might have not known before, the more you're inclined to work with us. So, you know, it only benefits everyone in the long run. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, we just want to be, you just want to be a standard. You're independent, you write, you produce, whatever it is, you should be at Sync Music. You should be, what you're making should be accounted for. You should have sync opportunities in front of you, because you ain't got to be Stormzy to get syncs. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You ain't got to be Drake to get syncs. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You just got to have good sonics at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, like I said, I'm someone, I ain't Jay-Z. Like, we're clearing 6 figures consistently in syncs. It's not a problem. Do you get what I'm trying to say? As much as you might feel like, oh, you know, I don't have the biggest platform. I'm a small artist, smaller producer. It don't matter. You got the song someone wants, they're gonna pay for it.
There's still an opportunity.
Yeah, 100.
I think that's good. Like, in terms of, I guess, like breaking the barrier, I guess, so to speak, because I think there's it'd be a common misconception that unless you were an artist of a certain level, that you wouldn't even be eligible for syncs. How can my music possibly be on TV?
Absolutely, yes.
BS, man. My boy Raf Riley's a producer. Like, ask him what his music's collected in syncs. Like, do you get what I'm trying to say? We're talking about paying for houses outright. Do you get what I'm trying to say? He's not one of the biggest producers in the country by, you know, commercial success, but he's making music that's getting used everywhere. It's as simple as that. That's BS, man.
I think it's about having the right network and infrastructure, especially with the kind of, with sync, it's more about just money's made behind closed doors. You know, it's money that's not seen. You know, if you're in the right network and you got the right kind of people that you're speaking with, then, you know, once you have access to it, you know, Bob's your uncle and you're in the money.
You're in the money, man.
Love that. And so, Luna,
I know Luna's like money, man.
Luna, what does growth look like to you and Dream Life Records?
I think for us, success looks like, you know, breaking breaking the new artist on our own label. I feel like, you know, I've had some good successes, you know, us individually, you know, signed some really great stuff. But again, that was us like working for somebody else, and, you know, sort of like they get to own it, and when we leave, we don't still get to have anything that, you know, any association apart from our relationship. So success for us as a new label is definitely to, you know, break something that we've signed on our label, and allowed that artist to have, you know, the successes or the opportunities that anyone else that is in their position should be getting. And I think it's just repeating that aspect, you know. And yeah, I would say that's for us, that's what success looks like.
Amazing. And then Eve, you touched on a point that kind of feeds into my second question, really, or second point, because you talked about there not being enough Black women in, executive roles, or, even if we talk about, really there's a small number still of Black owned businesses in media and entertainment, especially music. And so that number is even smaller when it comes to women owned businesses. Are there any that you know of management teams or businesses that are, run by women? Do we have any examples?
I mean, it's really shocking that I can't actually think of many examples. Like, there are amazing women managers who work with labels, but in terms of JVs, and we got one, Luna, that you can think of.
I got one. The only one I would actually say a woman manager that runs is probably Sarah Stinnett.
Yeah, so in terms of like big company,
yeah,
and that's the only one. Like, I
but that's what's going to change, hasn't it? Because if you really think about it, like the amount of publishing company JVs, label JVs, like the majority that I know are guys. So yeah, that's something that I've become more aware of, and just thinking about when looking at deals. And hopefully that changed, I think, through mentorships and through visibility of women coming through and thinking you don't have to necessarily go into a company, you can set up your own thing and build around that. The
only joint venture I can think of would be Carlin with Vibe Out. She looks after Jack James, and doesn't look after them. She is the label for like Jack James, Scribs O'Reilly, also manages Scribs. But yeah, other than that, I thought about this before I asked the question. I was like, I can only name Carlin, which isn't.
So Jams has a label.
Carlin, but we know that.
Don't forget A-Dot.
Tiffany Calver got one as well with Polydona.
He has just got a new label. There we go. Okay, so now the juices are flowing. We can think of some examples.
Well, but I would just love it to be normalized for, like, even if you're not high profile, like you're not a DJ, you're not already like doing bits, you're maybe just, you've got great ears and you're coming through. That's something that would be good, that it's just a bit more normal and we're not thinking of the sort of the bigger names.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. So I will throw this question to Lunik, actually. Is there any advice or kind of key learnings that you can give just based on your experience and your process of, like going from label life into joint venture into Sony? Like, if there are any, budding executives on the call or A&Rs, just talking about your, key things that you've learned or what you would have told your younger A&R self.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, I think it goes down to like the passion that you have for what it is that you want to do, whatever it is, whether it's music, acting, whatever. I think, and the passion prompts, like, you wanting to get the knowledge. So for me personally, when I was younger, I was like, okay, cool. I've seen this stuff on music. I'm fascinated by music stuff. I used to actually think that every music video I saw, the artist owned every car and every house and all of these things. But I guess that's what marketing is, It's selling you a story and a narrative. And one of the first things I did was just go on Google. And because I started buying CDs and I started to see, just the curiosity in me, that label, I started to see like covers, I'm seeing names, but then I see this thing called A&R, then I'm seeing a label logo and I'm like, I thought it was all just the artist. So I'm like, okay, so then there's other people, you're starting to see the credits. The credits is telling you, okay, there's a producer, there's this, da, da, da. Then it leads me to starting to know about, okay, there's different parts of, different types of people that can work within this space. We all start off by trying to be the artist, right? But not everyone's going to make it.
I mean, not me, but yeah.
I'm saying a lot of people, that's the first thing that people do, will go and be an artist, but not everyone's going to be, Not everyone's going to be like Av or anything like that. So for me, I got to a point where I was like, listen, I still want to do music, but I want to maybe tackle it from a different space where people don't really sort of like, think about that.
Does that mean that somewhere I can find audio of you rapping or singing?
You can, but it's not on YouTube. So yeah, I'm good. MySpace, done.
Okay.
But it's like just that curiosity just made me like Google stuff, and I started to find out, like, before there was the big four, like EMI, Warner, Sony, Universal, just that. And then how they have subsidiaries and how much, you know, of the marketplace they own and how much independent owned. It just made me understand like sort of the music business side of like, just from a general point of view. And I was able to see, okay, cool, well, this falls into that and that falls into that. And I just think you just keep increasing your knowledge, because the more, you know, it's very important to keep learning, because you've got to understand who the key players are who are in your industry. It's very, you know, I find it very bizarre for someone to say, I love music, but they can't name me 3 or 5 their favorite A&Rs. They can't name you like an artist, but no producers. Do you know what I mean? I just think there needs to be a bit more curiosity. You have to know everything that's going on, because it allows you
Study
to
the business, basically.
Yeah, you have to know the business.
And just like live and breathe it. And so Eve, again, I guess I like to ask you the same question and ask you to answer it from 2 perspectives. So from your experience in dealing with independent artists, with, you know, from AWOL perspective, are there any kind of key learnings or advice that you would give to artists and manager pairings in regards to, you know, approaching a distributor like, you know, yourself, or getting into some of these deals?
Yeah, I would also say like knowing the business, knowing the structure of deals that is right for you. Of course, like I want to work with all of the talented artists, but an AWOL type of deal might not be the right type of deal for you as a manager or as an artist. I think that's where it's so important just to know the resources that you'll need, the type of deal that you want to get into, and kind of going back to that when we're talking about the negotiation points, like what are the pillars that are the most important thing? Is it being independent? Is it, you know, like necessarily like, oh, the US might be really important, like just really identifying those goals and those really key important things, so when you're entering into a deal, that is reflected within the deal.
Yeah. And Avelina and G, just any kind of key learnings from your experience in going into this business with Cooking Vinyl?
Read the contract.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean,
contracts, and then I think just educate yourself, man. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Know what you're getting yourself into, and just educate yourself. You might not be into reading. I can't read to save my life, but you know, when it comes to business, no, obviously I've always found it difficult, if I'm honest. You get what I'm trying to say? But when it comes to business, you do what you gotta do.
You discipline yourself. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you gotta know, and you know, a little piece of advice I'd personally give is to also seek counsel from someone who knows more than you, to fellowship with people who've got similar knowledge as you, and to try and give knowledge to someone who may have less knowledge than you. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So yeah, that's our personal experience, and I think just educating ourselves is the most important.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, sometimes teamwork and partnerships, you know, is very important. You need to be very self-aware. You know, I myself, I might have more business acumen, but I might have a lot more music acumen. So you really need to understand your role and position as well.
Absolutely.
You know, when you're starting a business, when you're doing, when whatever you're doing. You know, same with AWOL, same with Dream Life, or whatever organization. You need to understand your role and position. You know, and that's whatever level you are at. And if you're just starting today, you might be like, okay, so I need to evaluate myself. What's my strengths and what's my weaknesses? And with your weaknesses, you need to think, okay, how do I bolster that? How do I add to that? Is there anyone that I need to bring on board? So, you know, definitely try to have a realistic view and expectation of yourself as well. That's very essential to be successful in business.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's about like you say, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, understanding what you contribute to a team, and understanding what the other party is contributing, and you kind of having like perfect ebb and flow, so that you guys are supporting each other, and you know, putting as much back into the partnership. Quite clearly, a consistent theme here is knowing the industry. I think you are to a certain degree responsible for what you know and what you don't know. The resources are out there. There are, you know, as we're on this call, there's, you know, things like the MMF and lots of other resources for artists and managers and executives to tap into. So, you know, I guess we, you know, really are responsible for educating ourselves on the business that we say we want to work within. So we've got some time now to open up for some questions. So let's do that.
Cool. So we're going to read out the questions that was put in the chat first, and then we can open up the floor. So a question from Jed Joseph was, higher up at the labels, is there also an issue with class?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah. Everyone went to the same school.
Yeah.
It seems like
Or like everyone's like nephews, cousins, uncles had a job in this. Like it's very rarely that, you know, you go into a job. Like I remember when I applied for my job at Universal, I didn't even get to interview stage. And at that time, I already set up my own label. I was putting out artists. I was already understanding like, you know, what Spotify was and this, that, the other, and da, da, da. And actually the artist I was managing at the time, we charted at like, I think top 10 on the in the R&B charts on iTunes or something like that, which was like, you know, it's not a big thing, but it was something though. Do you know what I mean? I felt
That's
like
for a novice though, isn't it?
I was trying to do, but then, you know, you wouldn't even be sort of like feel like you're being recognized at all until you sort of like, you have to force your way through the door, you know?
Mm-hmm. Eve, did you want to add to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely is a problem when, especially looking at class. I definitely found because obviously I'm sure everyone can hear, I didn't grow up in London. I grew up in Scotland and moved to London and was just like, I'm not from West London. Like, you know, like I don't seem to be in the same like crew that everyone who's really senior at labels are. So I think, can definitely see that there's a problem there. But that feels like it's changing. I don't know, Av and G and Lunik, if you guys feel that, but like more recent years, feels like it's getting a little bit better in the industry.
Definitely from compared to when I first started.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think that also is like, you know, down to as well, like, you know, the power and success of our music and our genre. It's, you know, undeniable now, really, the force of Black music in the, I'm going to talk about UK specifically, you know, you can look across the charts. So therefore the teams definitely have to be more reflective of that. Nicole, do you have another question?
Yeah, another question is, what barriers have you experienced to break your catalogue of music on a national mainstream level and within the media as well?
I can answer that. I mean, I think barriers, all right. So I feel like with Black music, it's one of the only ones where you can chart high, but it's not reflective on your radio play. Whereas other genres of music that may not be may not even be charting at all, but they get extensive levels of radio play. And I had an example where we did Russ did the Keisha and Becky record. Record was about top 20 for about 4 weeks. It's only when we got to around top 10 that we got Radio 1 playlist. And trust me, I look at the Radio 1 playlist, I see some of the people, some of the additions that gets added and where the record is at. And I'm like, there's definitely some that go in a lot quicker than the others. It's almost like you have to show and prove, like,
way more,
that's not gonna go away. Then it's sort of like they feel comfortable. And same, it's mainly with mainstream radio, like even Capital and stuff like that, for example, to get A-list daytime radio on that. It seems like it's almost impossible. But then you see with other genres of music, you know, it's playlisted before the record's even out. So it's just like, that's definitely, I feel like it's a massive obstacle.
It's really interesting. I don't know like how many people on this call would have been at other calls, but this conversation about like access to Radio 1, and kind of like the top national radio stations and Black music is constant in every conversation we've had. This comes up, so looking forward to dissecting and having a discussion, a concentrated discussion just about that. But yeah, no, Lunik, you're absolutely right. It's, you know, it's still treated as niche or specialist, when actually if you look at the top 10, it is all Black music. And actually, you know, now we're doing it without the support of those bigger stations. So radio is definitely a massive barrier. Are there any others that the panel contribute?
I would say there's a barrier if you're a Black artist who maybe the assumption of the genre you do isn't necessarily an assumed like Black genre. That makes sense. So say you're like a Black rock artist, I think there's often barriers there. One of the artists I work with, he's a singer-songwriter, he's Black, and I've seen barriers where like the playlisting support, people aren't quite sure where he sits, and I'm like, well, it's really obvious where he sits. He's
just listen to the song.
Yeah. So I'd say that's a barrier. And that's something I'm constantly just feel like I'm educating people on of that, and that, you know, Black music isn't a genre, it's every genre. So that often feels like a bit of a barrier.
And I think to add to that as well, like I think we even had an example with Lil Nas X with the Old Town Road, where they was putting it
the
on
country
like
music scene
treetops,
did not want to
you know?
accept him at all.
It's a country record. Like, it's just things like that. You start to see those things, and it's like, you know, and you have to sort of like get a country artist to legitimize the song to you. It's just, yeah, it's things like that for sure.
Eve, you have created a quotable. And I know, yeah, I can see Nicole nodding. You said Black music isn't a genre, it's every genre, and I'm sure that is going to now have a life of its own.
No cap.
And G, in regards to sync music, any barriers in the publishing world or space?
No.
As in breaking an artist.
Yeah, I mean, the question was quite extensive now, but I guess let's just focus on was any barriers to breaking an artist?
Yeah.
Mainstream, yeah.
Breaking an artist mainstream.
In terms of sync music.
Yeah, like I said, do you feel like you're getting any obstacles with maybe getting some placement for some of your other producers versus some your other writers?
Yes. Oh, well, naturally, I would kind of say that, I don't know how to put this, but like urban music, or I don't know if I can say the word Black music or whatever, but you know, I would say that some people still have an old-fashioned mindset where they'll be like, oh, there might be a supervisor that might feel like this music is not of our cusp, you know, this is not what we do here. So, you know, it might be a bit difficult to help them understand that it's a new era, it's a new age, where hip hop is now pop, whether you like it or not. So you might want to be putting some funky disco when you're in your sync, but no one wants to hear that. Your fan base or your audience want to hear the new Digga D on their show, for example, say. So it might be a bit difficult to help translate that sometimes over to them. But, you know, I guess that's where people are such as ourselves are here to kind of show them, this is the new age, this is the new era, this is what the people want to hear, this is what's in demand. So, you know, that is a difficulty, I would say, you know, kind of helping to kind of show the older generation or people who are old-fashioned, to show them that this is what's happening now. That could kind of be a bit of a difficulty on the sync side of things.
Yeah, you're right, actually, because I guess if, for example, if you took a program like Love Island, that is like complete Gen Z millennial in terms of its audience demographic, and then you listen to the music that's synced with under it, actually, if they were probably creating the sync in direct relation to the audience profile, you probably hear a lot more of, you know, our music at the back of those programs.
100%.
They're not too bad, so I didn't want to shade them. I think they put.
No, I'm not. But even using them as a reference isn't a shade. I'm giving examples. That was at the top of my head.
No, that's a great example.
We've got to make them up. We work to them.
Yeah, big up Love Island. We like you guys.
But now we know what you're trying to say, though.
But all the others. Nicole, are there more questions?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So what I'll do is I'll mix it up and go to Nick. I can see you've got your hand raised. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, thanks a lot. I'm Nick Aziefa. I'm a partner at the law firm Simpkins. And before I ask my question, just saying, people have mentioned about the importance of reading contracts and, you know, looking at the deal right. Anyone needs any help with that, I'm here. And the second thing I wanted to do is to ask a question to Avelino, please. You've got a career as an artist as well as a career as a business owner and working with other artists on their careers. I was just curious about the interaction between those two things. You know, do those two pursuits of yours feed into each other? Do they sometimes come into conflict? Just interested in how that works for you.
No, I don't think they come into conflict because, you know, an important part of what I provide for sync music is an example of what you can achieve in the realm of sync. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So understanding that, you know, like G said earlier, you got to know your position and what roles you play. And at the same time, also, you know, just because I work with music, when it comes to briefs, you know, things might come to me quite quickly in terms of what we may have in the archives for particular syncs, or, you know, something that we do that isn't you know, isn't part of our business model or what we say we do. What we say we do on the tin is, you know, I might pair, you know, a producer and an artist together in a session just because I think it will work. So I don't think I use my creative skill set to benefit sync music. So it's quite seamless, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Actually, just to add on the back of Nick's point, then, do you think that, or have you found that a lot of artists gravitate towards you in common, like as their entry point into the business, as in like, oh, this is Avelino's company, I love Av, I want to, you know, get an opportunity to work with him?
You know what? Maybe, but not really, because at the end of the day, like, you know, when I say like I'm an example, I'm just an example of what you can get in the realm of syncs. Really, that's how I like to think of it. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It might be that, but that might be a part of it. But you know, I just provide proof. I'm just like a case study of, look, you can get these syncs. Like, I'm not just telling you about them. They're not, you know, they're not myths. Like, they actually happened. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the role that I kind of accept, and that's the nature. That's the nature of the birth of sync music. We wanted to exploit that and provide that same, you know, those same opportunities for other artists in the same way that we did. You know what I mean? While still owning our music, owning our catalog, our publishing.
Got it. Nicole?
Oh, another question is from Andre. What is the best way for creators to get in contact with labels and publishers?
Oh,
Buzz.
I mean,
Buzz.
Yeah, make noise.
okay.
I think that leads on to one of the next questions, which we had, I think it's more for Av and G. How can artists and managers get in contact with you guys directly?
Buzz, and I'm joking. We got an email, info@syncmusicglobal, Global, straightforward.
We'll add it somewhere, surely, in the...
Yeah, we'll share it.
Cool.
I can see Mohammed, you've got your hand up. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mohammed, or Mo. I'm just started out, I'm in college, but I'm doing some talent scouting at NQ, and I had two questions actually. The first one's directed towards Eve and Nick, which is, you talked about the hype or the buzz that's been spread around of, you know, an artist is being independent, and that sort of to a degree helps with their music. I wanted to ask then, as a label then, seeing that, and you talked about it's not necessarily a good thing for you guys, do you think you've had to be reactive towards that, or do you think that hype has stopped at the barrier between fans and then artists and publishers and that sort of thing?
Is that to me?
Either of you, Eve or Lunac.
I would say, I mean, with the independent stuff, I mean, like I said, I mean, for us, you know, like I think there's disadvantages and advantages on both. And I think maybe for on Eve's side, you know, the business model that, you know, they have is a very do it yourself, keep your independence, keeping your masters and stuff like that as such. Whereas my one is a bit more traditional. We're doing licensing deals now, but it's like a new thing. I mean, compared to like lifetime of copyright type of deals. And I think that, you know, I think back in the day, right, the way we used to sort of like get media, you know, it used to be presented a certain way. I think now that everything's globalized, you've got access to information everywhere, and artists will always tell you about their experiences. So if someone that you know or you rate has said to you, yo, I've had this bad experience, that will tend to stick on your, like, in your mind. So sometimes you find that you're trying to go for a certain artist and you find out that, you know, oh, but this person said such and such, and that might be beneficial for someone like Eve to take someone like that because they already got that sort of ethos and stuff like that. Whereas like on the flip side of things, there might be someone that is that's independent driven, but feels like there's a limitation to what they can do. They might feel like, you know, I've pushed it to as much as I can push it. Now I want to partner up and try to take it global and stuff like that. So they might then consider a label. Example of that being Stormzy. Stormzy being a, you know, massively independent artist, breaking independently. But then when he came to doing his album, he did a licensing deal with Atlantic Records. So he's starting to understand, you know, I think it was based on what he wanted to achieve in that ambition. And I think he made a business decision based on that. But I do feel like, you know, it's all based on what you're trying to achieve. And that's where it will sort of dictate where you end up.
100%. Cool. Thank you. And The second question was towards the guy that sings, so Avelino and Co. I was talking about like I said, I'm new to this whole music industry, but I wanted to ask, like, with sync being a whole nother realm of accessing revenue for artists that they might have not even thought of before, do you see outreach more common between you guys, or compared to artists coming to you guys saying, I want to work with you lot, or do you see the other way around? And I want to say, like, where do you see that going? Would you want artists to be more educated about approaching you guys, or over you going to them?
No, 100. That's something I feel like, you know, we're trying to change. You get me? Because, like I said, the majority of artists or producers or writers we work with at the moment, you know, when we're having our initial conversations, they feel like they're learning a lot of things that they didn't previously know. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So, like I said, I don't know if you was listening to the whole thing. You know, our aim is to just be a standard. You know, you're an independent artist, writer, or producer, and then you go to sync music. So with that being said, you know, we've got to find ways to bridge that gap and change that narrative that you just described, where, you know, maybe artists might not know about syncs, or, you know, well, publishing, etc., etc. That's our, you know, that's part of our vision and our job to
Definitely.
Let me say fix that. Do you get me?
Definitely. Just to springboard up quickly, I think in an ideal world, people would come to us, you know, the best artists would come to us, and then we can just lap them up. That would be ideal. But, you know, in reality, you know, a lot of people are unaware of their publishing, that they're unaware that, you know, they have uncollected royalties out there because they're focusing on their business, on creating music and doing what they do. So, you know, we're kind of more proactively out there looking for people and trying to bring them over and help them understand, you know, what the options that are out there in front of them.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Nicole?
Yeah, and next question we have, I think it's more for Eve, is how can you get into A&R? When are the internships becoming available? Hard industry to get into.
Totally, it really is, and I think it's not a very visible part of the industry in terms of, like, jobs aren't posted in the way that often, like, internal roles within labels are. And what's really good though is there's great mentorships at the moment. Just to shout one out, creating vision, that a manager called Kwame started with a team. Check that out, because there's just a movement of, like, great mentors in A&R who are coming through. I think there should be more internships as well within labels appearing this year. It's definitely been, like, an industry-wide discussion. I know internally, like, we've been having that discussion as well, of internships in A&R is so important. That's how you get your foot in the door. So I'd say, yeah, check out any mentorships, creating vision being one of them. I'm sure MMF know of more internships as well that are coming through, and more mentorships. And then just in terms of getting into A&R and scouting, I'd say when you do kind of have that connect within A&R, and maybe you've been introduced to someone, just sending through music that you think's great, like keeping them kind of across things. That's how I got started, like making playlists of things that are just buzzing that I've heard about, and sending that through. That's kind of how you start that relationship, and then hopefully a position comes up and you can move into a more formal role.
Wicked, thank you. I can see T, you have your hand up. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, good evening, everyone. First, actually, I was going to share something while you're all speaking. I don't know if you saw my daughter Jemima, who's 7, popped in, and she said, "Who are those?" And I said, "They're all bosses in their field." You know, and literally that is what it is. So super proud of what you guys are doing, man, and super inspired as well that you're flying the flag. And when she grows up, she knows it's possible, you know. And these were faces that we didn't see in the industry when we were growing up.
100.
So it's super important what you're doing. It's more than the money, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to my question, actually. Working as a manager, a Black manager, but in an industry where artists tend to be in the niches, so the classical world or the jazz world, you know. And I noticed, like, Lunik, Eve, like, you're all working, you've all said, in Black music. But for some reason in the UK, when that black music label is used, those kind of spaces are kind of ignored. So it was just to ask the question to you that even though the percentages of the music and the streaming and the interest might not be as massive as a mainstream artist, for example, they might never get a top 40 in the singles chart, but they might get a top 10 in the albums chart with the right kind of infrastructure behind them. So in terms of your A&R in, are you open-minded to those kind of artists who might not have lyrics in their music, but they have
We definitely need lyrics. We need songs, but I understand what you're saying. No, definitely. I think, I think before, right, back in the day, you had labels were a bit more genre specific. So if you were from a certain genre, there's only a certain label that you'd probably talk to. Do you see what I mean? I feel like now there's so much blurred lines. There's some labels that you look at the history and you see the artists that they've got, you'd be like, there's not a match kind of fit. But definitely, I think we are open to anything that's good, anything that's dope, anything that's exciting, for sure, 100%.
Definitely. I would just say with my previous hat on, like previous like publishing, that is where, especially if you're talking about like classical music or even like instrumental music, publishing is so key. Like, and Av and G will probably speak on that as well, but there are, I guess, less barriers within, if there's music without lyrics in the publishing space, because there's incredible soundtracks, sync side of things, but also writing for others as well. So yeah, I'd say, yeah, publishing can be really important if it's a project that's maybe not like a mainstream artist facing type of project.
Thank you. Beloved, you're definitely more than welcome to please get in touch with Sync Music. info@syncmusicglobal.com, beloved.
I must say, I love the passion with you guys, man. I wish you
come on, man. Come on, man.
Cool. The next question we have is, do you believe there'll be more independent labels and publishing right companies coming up as the major streamline their roster due to COVID?
With a major who? With a major what, sorry?
So do you believe there will be more independent labels and publishing right companies coming up as majors?
No choice. There's no choice. Music is becoming decentralized. People can now upload music from a touch of their button on their phone. So I think there's no choice. So, I think, I'm not saying these are going to be good labels, but there's definitely going to be more, and the cream of the bunch will definitely rise to the top. But there's definitely going to be more labels, more publishing companies, more PR companies. There's going to be more people just within the music business in general, because it's become, I personally believe it's becoming more accessible. We're now in the age of where anyone can do anything on their phones and their laptops. People can run enterprises just from their phones. So I definitely do think so.
I agree.
Same.
But and no hair, did you want to unmute because you had that question? So did you want to elaborate a bit more?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Very, very good presentation, by the way, learning a lot. Yeah, I just wanted to expand on the point I made, because I'm new to the industry, and what I'm understanding is that the major record labels or record companies may well be decentralizing or at least streamlining the operations in terms of only concentrating on the acts that make the money or well established. So when it comes to guys like yourselves, particularly Evelino and with Sync Global, looking at the publishing end and the returns on that and having to make sure everybody's getting paid, do you think smaller organizations, independent organizations, will be looking to do that for more independent and smaller artists rather than having to come under an umbrella, if you like, for the big major record companies?
The question,
Yeah, my signal went funny, so I missed what bro said. Was that for the man?
I do apologize. Yeah, so what I'm saying is, do you think there'll be more companies coming up like you guys having that setup, because Universal, Sony, EMI are just going to be concentrating on the money makers and the more established artists and the stadium fillers, And so for any independent artist coming through, rather than having to claw their way through, or at least keep knocking at the door on the majors, smaller independent groups, whether it be managers, labels, publishing, anything like that, there'll be more businesses like this.
Exactly
So
right.
they're more
Beloved.
accessible.
Exactly right. Exactly right, beloved. Exactly right. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay then.
Absolutely, and like one of the key reasons why we're so focused on, you know, artists retaining ownership of their music is so that we don't become competitors of the labels you mentioned. But we're in our complete own lane. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So
yeah, I understand.
Can I just
Sorry.
add or expand on that point, just because I mean, obviously, Avelino and G, you are coming from the realm of publishing, but I think as it's been touched on quite frequently, artists knowing more about the business, artists being, you know, and I'm not for or against majors, but artists going through the major system and being dissatisfied or looking at their deals and thinking, actually, like, I could take less money or I could invest in myself, and it's gonna be a harder fight, but actually the returns are going to be great in the long term because I will own and, you know, I'll be able to own or retain my masters. More artists are actually of that mindset at the moment.
Now 100, and also
you will see more labels, more independent labels popping up. But outside of that, outside of just companies, it will be the artist that is the label, because there's nothing stopping artists from self-uploading. You can go to a DistroKid, or you can go to any of these services, AWOL, sorry, of course, and actually just self-upload. That's therefore making the artist the label. So definitely, I think that the majors, I mean, COVID has obviously hit every industry quite hard, and of course, you know, now I think people have to be more conservative with their signings. I think before it was like sign everything and then just drop what doesn't work, but you can't really do that in this climate. And so it enables artists to really think about how they can kind of create their own business structures and really manage their own careers end to end. And if you've got a really good, astute manager, then actually you create a business partnership with them, and then you guys just go at it. You know, there's a lot of artists that are operating as their own label, A, through you know, choice, or B, because they don't have a choice because they're not at a stage that majors are looking at them anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the quick point I just wanted to make was, for example, I've been planning just to get my company signed up and formed this week, and get everything in place so that once things start to open up, I can really start doing the work for my artist in terms of from administration, marketing, digital marketing, and really getting the music out there. But I'm just wondering how many more individuals, and possibly having thoughts or conversations like this, where they're going to be setting up, as I say, whether it's a label, whether it's a management company, whether it's a publishing company, from the confines of their own bedroom and running like a cottage industry. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think that COVID has done that. It's forced their hand, if you like.
Yeah, definitely, man. You get me, and not even in just our type of business, just business in general. The need for an office is just becoming less and less. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Especially with everything that's gone on. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's a big expense you can cut. In a lot of industries, you know, when you can cut expenses, they're going for it. Like you go to local Tesco, and you know, your cashier is a machine. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? So, you know, offices and things like that, you know, those are expenses that I'm sure a lot of businesses in all different types of industries are looking at, thinking, oh, wait, hold up a minute, we don't actually even need this. I think Twitter now, officially, all the employees don't go into work, they work from home. Do you get what I'm trying to say? As a result of the pandemic. So do you get what I'm trying to say? It's this new age, man. There's a lot of adapting to do. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And I think that's one of those big parts of the adaptations, the offices, etc.
Yeah, there's so many setups, you know, whether it be WeWork, whether it be, you know, like Soho House, for example, where like people are literally running their businesses not only from their own homes, but then just finding like co-working spaces where they can maybe hold a meeting or two. But you know, like I work with someone that's in Glasgow, for example. I have never met them. They probably have no intention of coming to London, but, you know, they sink into my business pretty well, for example. So, you know, they're complete remote working, you know, COVID or not, you know, he's not going to journey to and from, you know, London.
Yeah, man, just cutting costs that you don't need, isn't it? Do you get what I'm trying to say? 100.
I think, yeah, definitely the pandemic's taught us that for sure.
Cool. So I know we're pressed against time. I have put in the chat any questions that aren't answered as of yet. We will cover in our newsletter or within directly. We do have 2 final points before Whitney kind of wraps up. One of the last questions were about how can you find out, I think was it about internships and stuff. So again, I'll just say to sign up towards the newsletter, and we will add in all kind of internships that are current or to come. And then our last question was from Ben. So Ben, did you want to unmic and ask your question?
I thought we were done. It wasn't so much a question. It was a couple of things in response to T, and I don't want to mispronounce your name, the gentleman in the green T-shirt with Jamaica in it. So the first thing with T was in terms of the whole classical side of things. I think that we should connect and have a chat, because just to let everyone know, I'm from AIM, the Association of Independent Music. One of the reasons I moved across there is to make sure there's more access for people of color to be able to access the resources. There's amazing resources over there. So if you are independent, you should definitely be accessing those resources. And also, like, just in terms of what Whitney was saying in response to Bakene Ando, I think I said your name wrong. I had to go. I'm sorry.
It's Birkin no hair, but my name's Sterling. Sorry, it's the way it comes up on the thing. So I apologize for that. I've got to get it sorted.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, I was just saying, like, if you're setting up a new label, again, should converse. Look, independently, it's about information. It doesn't matter where you work from, whether you're working from a big corporate office or you're working from your bedroom. Like, it's about your information, your access to information, and what you're actually putting out and how you're putting it out. Like, nowadays, it's not necessarily about an artist, it's about entrepreneurs. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a manager, whether you're you know, someone with a platform, a lawyer, whatever. If you're a music entrepreneur, you're a music entrepreneur, and it's about knowing how you're going to create your income streams, how you're going to get your revenue, making sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and that's what we're about, AIM. And I don't mean to make an advert, because I also am a manager and, you know, independently put music out. But I just think it's so important that people know those resources are available. Because even when I started, I was like, yo, all of this is available, and I didn't know. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure everybody knows. Yeah, so get across and, you know, make sure you're tapping into that network, because there's a lot there for you.
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. Right, so Nicole, I'll round up because I'm aware that we've made you sit on a call for an hour and a half. So the next panel is going to be on the 11th of May at 6 p.m. Make sure you're signed up to the MMF Unite mailing list, and then we will announce the amazing panelists that we have lined up for you, including the topic. The link to the mailing list will be added into the chat box, but also, of course, you can find it on Instagram and other sources. And then there's also a feedback form. We want to hear from you on how you guys feel today's session went, any kind of feedback, tips, hints, whatever. Just want to know how you feel that this conversation went and what you'd like to be, you would like to see discussed next. And then lastly, there is a Black Lives in Music survey. We would love for you guys to fill out so our voices can be heard. You know, it's not just for those in the wider industry, but catering to independent people like managers and artists. Again, we'll link that below somewhere in the chat box. So if there's many of you that kind of fit into that category could fill out the form, then we can be, you know, making sure that our numbers, data, voices are being heard across these surveys. Thank you so much, Eve, Lunik, G, Avelino, for your time this evening. I hope it was informative for you all. Definitely make sure you go check out the guys on their own profiles. And thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, beloved. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, beloved. Thank you so much.